I, like many of you, practically worship at the altar of flavor. And while there are many incredibly tasty dishes in the world, when it comes to pure flavor, curry may be on top. So today I'm making a classic butter chicken, which will not only taste delicious when you eat it, but will also fill your kitchen with some incredible smells. But in my opinion, the real star today is this Kenyan-Style Chapati, which is a textural revelation. And with the addition of an extremely aromatic spiced butter we're layering into it, also tastes and smells absolutely amazing. For those of you familiar with Indian breads, through some quirks of history, Kenyan chapati is very similar but not quite the same as the Indian paratha. So let's dive right into the heart of any great curry, which are the spices. I measured out 2 tablespoons of garam masala, 2 teaspoons of fenugreek, 1.5 teaspoons of turmeric, 2 tablespoons of sweet paprika, and half a teaspoon of Szechuan chili powder. There are many amazing spice blends and recipes you can find, but this one is built around spices that are accessible in most grocery stores, at least here in the United States. And specifically, one of the arguably most special spices in the great butter chicken recipes is unfortunately not on that list, and it's called Kashmiri chili. I chose to sub it with the regular unsmoked paprika and my go-to hot flake, which these days is Szechuan chili. If you've watched the channel before, you've probably heard me talk about gram-weighted recipes and how useful they are. This one is no different, but very small amounts sometimes don't register well on kitchen scales. That said, here are the weights of each spice. Half of this mixture is going into the chicken marinade and half is going into the sauce. So no need to measure, but pour out about half into a bowl and save the rest for sauce making. I added 100 grams or about 1/3 of a cup of Greek yogurt along with a big pinch of kosher salt, and then grated in 10 grams or 3 cloves of garlic and 10 grams or a nice chunk of ginger. If you don't have a microplane, you should probably get one. But in the meantime, feel free to blend this or use a mortar and pestle, or worst case, just mince it up really, really finely. I also squeezed half a lemon in. Mix this all up and then open a pack of boneless, skinless chicken thighs, trim the extra fat and any remaining bone off, and then cut them into nice big chunks. Mix these up in the marinade very well. You're gonna wanna let this sit for at least 30 minutes, but preferably a couple of hours. Given the lemon and salt in here, I personally would not leave this overnight. Next step is the chapati. I'm doing this before the sauce because I wanna let the dough rest for a while, which you'll see in just a minute. Start by combining 300 grams of all-purpose flour, 20 grams of neutral oil, 6 grams of salt, and 6 grams of cane sugar into a bowl, then pour in 180 milliliters of water. Stir it until you don't see any dry flour left, and then turn it out onto your counter. Knead the dough for 3 or 4 minutes until when you press your finger into it, it springs back quickly. Cover the ball with a moist towel and let it rest for about 5 minutes. Then split the dough into quarters and use your fingers to stretch and tuck the edges of the dough to form a rough ball. Once you've done all 4, go back to the first ball you pre-shaped, and with your hand in the shape of a C with its side on the counter and the dough in the middle, move your hand in circles around the dough until it forms a nice ball. Repeat that with the rest of the dough and then lay them onto a lightly floured tray. Cover them with your moist towel and let them rest for about an hour. This would be a perfect moment to work on the sauce. That said, I'm gonna go with the dough first, so that those of you who are maybe just here for that can watch it all in one go. While it's resting, we're gonna make the incredible spiced coriander butter, which is extremely fast and easy to make. Coriander seed is the seed of what's called here in the United States cilantro, and I love the way these two taste together. So I took a half a bunch of cilantro, trimmed off the very end of the stems, and then chopped everything else up. Then I took about a 1/4 cup of ghee or clarified butter and melted it into a saucepan along with a tablespoon of ground coriander seeds. Once it's melted and it starts to lightly simmer, turn the heat off and dump all of the cilantro in. If I hadn't just made that chicken marinade, I would say this is easily the best thing I've smelled all week. Once the dough is rested for about an hour, flour your counter and use a rolling pin or plastic wrap roll, if that's what you got, to roll the ball out back and forth until it's very thin and almost translucent. If the dough starts to stick, add a little more flour. You're looking for a long oval or rectangle for the next step, which is to spoon or brush a nice layer of the spice butter to completely cover the top of the dough. And this is optional, but I also seasoned it lightly with some crunchy Malden sea salt. Gently lift one side and roll it up like a cigar or maybe something else. This technique leaves you with many layers of dough and spiced butter, which is going to not only disperse the flavors of the cilantro and the coriander seeds throughout the dough, but are also going to create its signature layers, which give this bread such an incredible texture. Now wrap the dough all around itself like you're making a cinnamon bun, and then tuck the end into one of the gaps. Put them back onto your tray and cover them with a moist towel to let them rest for another 20 minutes. There are some truly beautiful ways to fold and roll these, but this one has gotten me a result I'm very happy with, and it also happens to be, in my opinion, the easiest. Once it's rested, heat a skillet over medium-high heat and grab your rolling pin to roll the flatbread out into a circle. If these aren't going right into the skillet, you can layer them between sheets of parchment paper. Add a nice spoonful of ghee into the skillet and fry the flatbread until the first side is just starting to get a little golden, then flip it over. Repeat the process at least a few times until the flatbread has these beautiful dark golden brown leopard spots. Lift it out and optionally brush both sides with a little extra spiced butter. As you can imagine, this bread is spectacular, and texturally, there's nothing quite like it. Finally, let's make the butter curry. Start by mincing up a large shallot and a chunk of ginger. Then melt a very large spoonful of ghee. This is butter chicken after all. In your saucepan, and add the shallots and ginger with a large pinch of salt to cook them over medium heat until they're translucent and very soft. Then get ready with 350 milliliters of tomato passata, aka tomato puree. Turn the heat off and add the reserved spice mixture into the pan. Stir them in and toast the spices for just 20 seconds or so, then pour in the passata along with 150 milliliters of heavy cream. Slowly simmer this for 25 minutes or so until it's nicely thickened. While that's working, take the chicken out of the bowl, and I like to lay the pieces onto a wire rack to bake them, but if you don't have one, feel free to put them directly onto a sheet tray or pan and cook them at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes until everything is concentrated and the marinade is lightly browned and the chicken is tender. As you can imagine, just as is, these chicken nugs would be delicious, but even more so once you add them into your thickened sauce and simmer everything together for about 5 minutes to meld all of the flavors. I'd eat this with basmati rice and literally every piece of the Kenyan chapati. It's just that good. But anyway, that's all for me on this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.